Yes, thank you very much, Sean. And we really enjoy your early morning sessions there. We really appreciate what you're doing and always organizing and handling these things in the background for us. This morning's Toolbox Talk is Fall Protection Plan, and we are going to discuss why this is so important and how we can implement it on site. Again, if you have any questions or queries, as Sean mentioned, please reach out to us, even if it is based on the content that you are hearing in these Toolbox Talks. But before we get into our Toolbox Talk topic this morning, we just want to say on behalf of IOPSA, FEM, as well as OHSS, just to take this opportunity to once again say a very big thank you to all of you who tune in at 7 o'clock every morning on a Tuesday, as well as those who are tuning in on a Monday morning at 7 a.m. for the Zulu Toolbox Talks. And we'd ask you to please rate, comment, or give us some advice on what you'd like to see in these Toolbox Talks every Tuesday or Monday morning. At this stage, we have had a lot of influx of information coming through, and we really want to say how much we appreciate that from your side. And a lot of the topics that are coming through are ones that we've already put on the cards for future, but perhaps there's a topic that we have discussed that maybe you want some more information on, or perhaps you just need an explanation on certain things, or you would like a new topic to be discussed in the health and safety industry, specifically to what you are doing out in the plumbing industry. So please reach out to us. We really do appreciate it. We might take a little bit of time to get back to you, but as always, we are combing through all these emails and comments and suggestions that we're getting to ensure that we give you, the listener, the best information possible. So we'd like to say thank you once again for all of you that are tuning in every Tuesday morning. Now, this morning we are going to be discussing fall protection planning and why it is so important to plan before working in any height. Now, the reason for this really is to prepare us not only for when incidents and accidents occur, but this is always the before incidents and accidents happen. And we've expressed this many, many times, especially in health and safety. Prevention is better than cure. So we don't want to wait for something to happen before we actually put some sort of steps into place to prevent it from reoccurring. But all of you out in the industry work in different areas. The plumbing industry is very vast. Many are in construction sites. Many are doing maintenance at private households. Some of you do a bit of both. But there are areas where you should have fall protection planning. And these are your main areas. If you are working on top of a roof, now again, we'd like to state that even if you are not on a construction site working on a roof, do you still need a fall protection plan when working on a private home? Well, after this toolbox talk, you answer that question for yourself. What about when working on a mobile or static scaffold? Again, this can be anywhere, on any site, even aside from construction. Working on a mobile elevated working platform, such as cherry pickers or scissors lifts, these also are taking you to a specific height, and there you would need to plan for fall protection. When working on ladders, on top of containers, or even on the back of a truck, all of these areas have an element of risk. Yes, some lower than others. Perhaps if you are offloading at the back of a truck, you might not be wearing a full body harness tied to a anchor point, but you still need to plan in order to protect somebody from a fall. Now, why do we say that this is so important? Well, for one reason, falls are currently one of the highest rated incidents and accidents on a construction site at the moment. Now, because we don't have these statistics for private use of ladders, scaffolding, and mobile elevated working platforms, we can see that we could actually take the statistic and add on so much more, because many are working at heights in the private sector as well, doing general maintenance, or perhaps just doing inspections on a day-to-day basis, also working with ladders and scaffolding. And these statistics don't actually get back to the Department of Labor or FEM. But obviously, when something happens on a construction site, this information is readily then available. So if this is one of the highest incident and accident ratings currently within the construction industry, aside from vehicle incidents and accidents, you can see the need for us really to look deeply into our own personal planning of fall protection. How are you saving yourself and those who work for you from a fall? Now, again, we ask the question, does this only apply if you are on a construction site? Well, the answer simply is no, because the principles of fall protection in all the areas that we've discussed before actually apply to the work of construction, not just construction sites. So let's explain this better to you. If you had to perform any work that fell under the definition of construction, which is repairing, maintain, or altering any building or part of a building, this falls under the term or definition, according to the regulations, of construction work. Now, yes, at a private home, this does not automatically become a construction site, but the work is deemed as construction work. Thus, a fall protection plan should be implemented, firstly developed, but then obviously maintained throughout that project. Now, why is this principle of fall protection planning from the construction regulation section 10 being issued out there to those who are actually performing what we call construction work, even if you're not on a construction site? Well, let's take a look at some of the areas where you would use fall protection, not in a construction site, but at a private home. Perhaps when you are working in a ceiling. Is there a possibility for a fall? Well, yes, this is quite a high risk situation since there's limited foot space. The access and egress to the place is limited by sometimes only one ladder, often supported by, what we wouldn't really call an anchor point on the access side of the actual roof entrance. Then inside the actual ceiling itself, you've got confined spaces, you've got limited spaces, you've got dust, not adequate lighting. There's so much else that goes into working in a ceiling that also makes this a high risk area. Then just standing above the ground level to offload or onload, as we mentioned, on the back of a truck. You also sometimes use a ladder to access these areas depending on the height of the truck, or maybe you just climb into the truck. Is there a possibility of falling off? Yes, this might be a lot lower risk, but there is still a possibility to fall off. So perhaps if you had a fall protection plan for working or offloading at the back of a truck, it might be a lot smaller than working on a roof, for instance, but it's still implemented. You still have a plan of action of how you're going to prevent a fall. Even if it's just a few pages, you've still done something to prevent someone from falling. Then when working near any size excavation, so if it falls within the term of excavation, then working next to that excavation would essentially be working at heights, since there's the possibility of a fall into the excavation and to a lower level. When stacking or storing items above waist level, why would this be determined as a fall risk? Well, you might not be falling, but the items being stacked or stored could also fall. And here the principles then of fall protection would apply. How are you preventing these items from not falling and injuring somebody below you? Even walking down steps. Now, you might laugh at this and say, well, there's so many steps. How is it possible to prevent falling? Well, the national building regulations for any household states that you should have adequate handrails, when walking up and down stairs. So when we look at any places that have steps, there should be adequate handrails. Now that is a form of fall protection. Just holding the handrail thus gives you the stability to walk up and down the steps. So you can see it's something very simple. It's something permanently in place. And then a little sign, perhaps if you are in a company, just stating please use the handrails would then be sufficient when it comes to fall protection. But we just look at a simple situation like stairs and say, well, people should know. Well, yes, we should know. However, what are you doing to ensure that people continuously understand the need for fall protection? So really, it sits with you as a company, and especially as the individual, the owner of a company, or even the employee of a company. What are you doing to ensure that the risk of falling is minimized as much as possible? Well, let us take you through the steps of a fall protection plan, or how to plan if you are working in an environment where there is a possibility of a fall. The first thing to do is start with an inspection of the work area. Determine what is the area of risk. Are you working on a roof? If you are working on a roof, take a look at the access that is needed. Will you need to use ladders, scaffolding, or an elevated working platform like a cherry picker? That access itself, is the access safe? When you climb up or down that access, what additional hazards are in the environment? Are there any areas where there's a possibility to fall onto sharp or protruding objects? Is there adequate space to lift or to drop equipment or tools? Then when working on top of this roof, is there any areas that you are going to be able to put anchorage on to ensure that you have adequate fall protection measures? So an inspection is probably one of the key areas where you are now going to be able to identify all the potential hazards and assess the risk. Now, this basically becomes your second part because you have to design a risk assessment around the entire working environment for fall protection. So this essentially becomes an issue-based or task-based risk assessment for working at heights specifically. And this is over and above the risk assessment of the actual task or issue that you are going to be dealing with on site, such as an inspection of certain stacks, or maybe an inspection of a geyser or a hydroboil, or even water reticulation systems, whatever it is that you are doing on site. This working at heights risk assessment would be an additional risk assessment. Then the actual fall protection plan will work in the following control measures. You need to start by trying to eliminate the need for working at heights. Now, you might say to yourself, well, we have to put the geyser on top of the roof. There's no way we can eliminate that. Well, that's true, but can you eliminate the amount of time that you have to work on top of that roof? For instance, are there certain things on the geyser that can be done on floor level and then lifted to the roof and installed in a quicker amount of time? So instead of lifting the geyser and putting all the components on while on the roof, then you could probably put all the components on the geyser on floor level, thus limiting the time that you are working on the roof or at a height. And this also forms part of fall protection or fall elimination, because if you restrict the amount of time, there's also less time to fall. So sometimes we might think, well, you cannot not work on the roof. And yes, this is agreeable. You cannot eliminate every risk. But if you can limit the amount of time spent on that high risk, you are also essentially bringing down the risk of fall protection. Then obviously prevention methods. As we mentioned, prevention is better than cure. And that's what we really want to achieve, don't we? We want to prevent ourselves from falling. We're going to discuss that in the next slide as well. Then you have restraint systems as well as fall arrest systems. Now, along with your fall protection plan, once you've set each appropriate control measure and how you are trying to achieve each of these controls, you then put a method statement of how you're actually going to go about working at heights, such as accessing the ladder, setting up the ladder correctly, climbing the ladder, uh, setting up your lifeline, ensuring you have full protection plan, full body harnesses, lanyards, how you're going to connect and how you're going to work. It doesn't have to be overly complicated. Keep it simple. Just a step-by-step method statement or action plan as it was, just to ensure that you have all the steps down of how you want to achieve the actual scope of work. And then always ensure you've got a review and monitor plan attached to this. Who is going to be in charge of ensuring the full protection plan is carried out? Who is going to be in charge to inspect the work while it's being done? Just to do a bit of a job observation to ensure that what's being written is actually what's being done. And what we are trying to achieve here is really just cordon off that risk. Put a barrier around the risk so that it's still there, but it is protected from, being exposed too highly on the site and injuring one of our workers. So let's look at each one of these, and we're just going to briefly discuss it, each four parts of a full protection plan, starting with elimination, the action of stopping something before it actually arises. And we've given a good illustration there. If you can, not work at heights at all, or if possible, limit the amount of time. Now, basically, the first step in this approach, again, is just to assess the workplace. Make sure that even before you have to do the job, specifically if you're on a construction site, right at tender stage, you can start talking to the architect or designer, stating to them that you need to work at height in certain areas. Is there a possibility of ensuring there are adequate anchor points, adequate egress, access points, etc.? That would be the best step. But while the project is going on, we can identify alternative approaches to the work that we can do. So yes, we mentioned we cannot always eliminate things, but we can limit the amount of time spent at working at heights. Another example is if you had to paint a house. Now we know that you have to use a ladder or scaffolding board sometimes to reach a specific height, especially to get to the ceiling. But there are other ingenious designs of longer poles attached to a painting rod that can also be used to reach a specific height. Now, this would limit a person from having to work on a ladder, thus eliminating a fall potential. However, it increases other risks, such as fatigue or the possibility of paint dropping into a person's eyes from having to look up the whole time, ergonomic hazards, etc. So we need to balance and see which one is more practical. Yes, you might have eliminated the risk of falling, but you've possibly increased the risk of something else. This means we need to take the time and really look from the earliest phases of a project, how it can be designed to work safely. Even the ergonomic aspect of working comfortably so that you do not have potential risks later on. Then we have the prevention, how we can prevent something from escalating. Since it is possible to fall from an elevated level, as well as the same level, such as tripping or falling, it is always necessary to identify the areas where a fall can happen and what type of fall can happen. This proactive approach will help you to prevent the possibility of a fall within the workplace. So again, walking to and from your vehicle to the area of work, have you identified any possible fall hazards? Even tripping and falling to the same level essentially becomes a fall. And what we want to do is prevent, for the most part, any type of fall that can occur. So don't only look at the roof, look at the access points as well as the walking or traveling between the area of work and the tools or equipment that you are needing to use. So don't ever take shortcuts with your health and safety. It's really not worth it. Then we look at the restraint method. Now, in essence, a fall restraint system prevents a worker from reaching a hazard. If you take a look on the bottom left-hand corner of the picture there, you have an anchor point with a fixed length lanyard that does not allow the worker to access the fall hazard. It stops him from reaching that. It actually restrains him from going further. Now, this is also a very, very good method, one that is widely used, especially on roofs, where a person can walk the entire roof with a certain fixed length lanyard, but it does not allow him to reach an edge of the roof. This prevents him thus from falling over. So a full restraint system will then allow the person to access the area, but it prevents him from falling. So this prevention system or restraint system is really a better system than just having a full body harness attached to a double leg lanyard. And that's why we actually speak about falling or fall arrest as the last part of fall protection. But it is the most widely used one, even though it's the least effective. So we always have a full body harness attached to fall arrest equipment. Basically, what fall arrest means is you still allow the person to fall, but you arrest them or stop them from hitting the ground. The problem is a fall is still occurring, and the risk or the danger of that fall is still going to affect that person. Not as harshly as if he hit the ground, but there are other situations or incidences that will occur when a person falls in a harness as well and is arrested from not hitting the ground. So, what must you do if you have experienced a fall in the past? Well, investigate every incident, whether it was a slip or a trip, a small slip down the stairs, a fall from heights, or even a nasty one from a roof, a ladder, a scaffold. The reason why we want to investigate is to prevent it from reoccurring. The action of stopping something from progressing or becoming worse. And again, reach out to those who can assist you with a proper fall protection plan. So we don't want to take too much of your time. Again, we don't want to take or go over time with these things. We just want to determine the risk, take your practical steps by ensuring you understand the area of risk where you are working. Be honest with yourself. Even if you do not fall into the category of fall protection from the legislative point of view or from legal sides, you can still prevent the occurrence of a person from falling even in private homes. And then again, keep it simple. Address the items in order of priority and do what is reasonable to protect yourself. Really, saving one life, no matter where you are, is always important. And then do it because you want to do it, not because you have to do it. It is true that fall protection plans are only needed in specific instances or when it is required by law. But again, ask yourself the question that we said from the beginning. Would I knowingly put myself or others at risk just because I didn't have to do something? Or would I do something just because I have the right to, regardless of the risk? Well, the principles of protecting ourselves and others from the possibility of a fall to a lower level or the same level should move us to want to act on the risk. So again, don't do it because you have to. Do it because you want to. So just as a reminder, if you haven't reached out yet for the Gauteng training in October, the 8th and the 9th for first aid and firefighting, please reach out to us. And then we will be in Western Cape in November in the Knysna area. We're just trying to solidify dates for that as well. Don't forget, you can reach out to us, Chris at ohss.co.za, safety at iopsa.org, or info at ohss.co.za. That number there, 071 875 2070. We are currently still only reachable on WhatsApp. You can even give us a WhatsApp call if you want to during any time of the day. We just unfortunately are not near cell service at the moment on this South African number, but as soon as we are, we will let you know again. So if you need the help, please reach out to us on email at this stage, WhatsApp us on the 071 number, or WhatsApp call us. SMSs and calls unfortunately will not be reached until October the 2nd. So we're going to hand over back to you, Sean, and say thank you to everyone who joined us this morning. And we look forward to seeing you next week for the topic on housekeeping.